So something that's been really interesting to see lately, one of the things that that's been going on in the news in the last number of months that's been really interesting to watch is to watch the issue of police brutality against African Americans, to watch that become something that everybody's talking about. So issues around driving while black, or um, issues around how the how the police officers and other people in that role might perceive or handle somebody who's black differently from somebody who's white, or even how they maybe handle just other people of color in general differently, have been around for a long time, in particular with African American people. And that's a conversation that that a parent will normally have with their child who's black once they reach a certain age. So it's been really interesting to watch something like that come to the forefront of what the nation's talking about. Something that before, unless you are of that ethnicity, or you're in close relationship with a black family and whatever, you don't really know the fact that these issues are just kind of at the forefront of when a black child is growing up, when they end up talking to them about, especially for a black male. That's something that the parents will sit down and talk to them about situations that they may come across, and how to handle it and things like that. And so in spite of all that's been going on, that's kind of it's been kind of, I think, a good thing for the black community, and so far to see that now finally the issues being acknowledged. And the only reason that's happening, that it's being acknowledged, is because of the advent of being able to record something, right? Before smartphones, it was always things like that would go on, right? They didn't just start, but no one talked about it. No one could prove it. And something like that is such a sensitive topic that if you bring something like that up and you can't convince the other person that you're telling about it that it's legit, they'll just deny it. They'll just say that's not a real thing. You just want to make me feel bad, or you just want to make me people don't like to be weighed down with any kind of negativity. They don't want to be made to feel as if they need to soul search or about issues regarding race especially, or anything. They don't want to be made to feel in any kind of negative way. So I think that what the advent of smartphones have done is really help to bring these circumstances to the limelight, because anybody can record it on a smartphone, right? So that's really been the beauty of it, is really being allowing other people to experience it, and allowing them to experience the trauma too. I mean, anybody watching the issue of what happened with George Floyd is found it traumatizing. It's especially traumatizing that people were around them, and the police officers didn't seem to care that they were being nudged and being told that, hey, this person's crying for their life, and they just dismissed that. And that was a little bit crazy. They were too much in their own zone. They just were not paying attention to anybody. And that wasn't good, because they're there to protect the public and serve the public. So if they have their own agenda and they tune out what people around them think, it seems a little strange, because it's like, well, why be there, So anyway, so it's been an interesting predicament, seeing all of that become something that everybody's becoming more conscious of. And those who like to say, oh, that doesn't exist, that's not a thing, don't make me have to think about that, are being forced to be more conscious of it. But of course the issue is, where do we go from here? I mean, do we just feel angry, feel frustrated? When is it going to change, and how is it going to change? And what's been surprising to me is that I would think that after those first few weeks of some of these, or I guess it's been more than weeks. I mean, weeks since George Floyd, but even years. I would think that the officers involved, the agency involved in these issues, would become more sensitive to that, knowing that anybody can videotape them, and then that would make them more sort of self-aware. And I'm sure some of them might have become that way, but in a lot of instances, it doesn't seem to matter. And that's why it's getting so hard to understand, because at this point in time, every police officer in the United States knows that people are really anxious about them overreacting to black lives and black males specifically. They all know that, yet it's still happening. It's like, every week or every few weeks. It's really it really just causes you to wonder, what should we do about it? What can we do about it? Because talking about it might not be enough. We've talked about defunding the police, which of course doesn't really mean defund, right? It just means like all other alternatives. I'm in support of in certain situations, especially in certain domestic conflict situations, just not calling the police to everything. I mean, they've started doing that in Colorado. I guess there's some sort of pilot program that's been going on for a year or two right now, that where they send like a social worker and an emergency responder, like an EMT or something like that, to certain situations instead of sending a police officer. I watched a few minutes of some sort of focus on that issue, and I thought, that's great that they're doing that. I was thinking along the same lines that they're not needed. Calling police officers with guns to every situation is really not necessary. There's some situations that could be handled perfectly fine with just two adults who are trained at responding to a conflicting situation. The issue of Brooks in Atlanta just really comes to mind in that sense. The guy that was in the Jack in the Box drive-thru, I believe, and drunk and passed out, ended up dead. I mean, that's insane, and it should not have happened that way. And I'm not saying the police officers didn't try to kind of handle the situation in a good way, but the excuses they were using was that he freaked out. He freaked out and reacted in a way that threw the police officers off. In that specific situation, that is. That's what in that situation caused him to lose his life. But really, I the whole time was looking and thinking, if somebody falls asleep in the drive-thru, they could have sent one of their workers in there to just wake the person up. Maybe you don't want them, and then call them an Uber. Don't let them drive home drunk, and that would have been resolved. Like, so many of these situations never really needed police presence in the first place, and then one or two people end up dead. That's insane. So it's kind of like, I mean, we definitely should look at other alternatives. We definitely should reduce the amount of police presence and that we use to respond to everything. Because if it's a matter of that people overreact to police, or the police overreact to people of certain ethnicities, then find a way to find other solutions to it. Don't ask them to come to every situation. So that they don't overreact to the people, and that the people don't overreact to them. Just find alternative solutions that are more effective, that don't cause just such adverse results as loss of life. If there are no guns there will be no loss of lives there, right? And so whatever will cause that to happen, we need to just find a way to mitigate those circumstances. And my mind is really primarily that we really just don't need cops responding to every kind of situation. We need to just kind of scale down the ways in which we're involving them in these conflicts. They're not there to bully and make other people feel like subdued, unless that needs to be done. Sometimes all people need is just someone to listen and resolve conflict, who's who can deal with themselves, handle themselves in a sized up well enough way. And then if police need to be called in, they can be. Anyway, like I said, there's a pilot program in Colorado that I was watching something on that's been working on that for a year or two, and that seems to be going pretty well. And that's something that I think other jurisdictions should really look into as a way of just really doing what what these agencies are there to do, which is to make the communities feel safe and make them feel empowered, not to push them down, not to control them so that they can't go about their lives and do what they need to do. The idea is they're there to support. That if communities don't feel supported by the law enforcement agencies, then the law enforcement agencies are not serving their purpose. They're there to support that community, not to shun them or control them or make them, because you know what? People have dreams too. Black people have dreams, white people have dreams, Hispanic people have dreams. Everybody has dreams and goals. Nobody is there for you to just strap him in a wall and just lock them up, or whatever it is that it seems that sometimes the vision is of the agenda that these agencies or whoever's in them seem to have in the way that they behave. So I mean, there just needs to be more attention given to the idea that if these agencies are not serving their purpose, if they're not making the communities feel supported and as if they're peace officers, then there need to be other solutions, period. No question about it. And it's very easy for certain political certain political avenues to go in the direction of saying, oh, well, they're just crazy and we need to just, control them and limit this and limit. It's easy for them to do that because it's not affecting them. It's not affecting their community. They're not the ones being, they're not the ones being put in that situation. If they were, they would find a way to, fight back too. And I don't necessarily mean fighting back through physical means, but speak up for it and stand up for it and try to do something different about it. So it's definitely a big deal, and it's definitely an issue that we need to do something about. But again, like I said, it really isn't new. It's always been there. It's just more visible, more obvious now, thank God, because of the advent of like smartphones that are able to record these situations and capture them and make it obvious to people that this is how these agencies are sometimes handling humans, especially when they're dealing with Black lives. They just lose their lives all too easily, way too easily, when they could have been prevented if just, more respect was shown and more love and more heart, instead of just sort of a reactionary, need to just do what you have to do, or do what your agenda is to do. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the solutions are completely. I know I have some ideas. Like I said, the idea that cops don't need to be called into everything is, that's definitely something to work on. But I'm sure as time goes on, we'll figure out more and more about how to handle all the nuances of how things play out. But definitely more needs to be done. And if we have government officials or others who don't care about the issue, then we should vote in the ones who do care, and who will do something about it, who do care about the people, and who do realize and do respect the idea that, these lives get taken away, their goals get taken away, the hopes of the family get taken away, whatever it is could have been of those lives are gone, and that's important. And if the government doesn't care about that, I don't know what it is that they do care about then. So this is a time to make a difference, because you don't want this issue to come up and then just go away and everybody just go back to business and have it be something that was an issue in 2020 at some point and still goes on, but no one talks about it anymore. I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be that, since it's so much in the forefront and so much being talked about, that something does get done about it. And the people who don't care for it because it doesn't happen to them, because it doesn't affect their community, okay, then be quiet. And let the people who do care about it and who do feel affected by it, let that be heard, and let them really be part of wanting a solution. And another thing is, when the press sometimes, they're pretty good about this, but if they want to find out, what is it like to be a black male of this certain age, of 20 to 50, I don't know, in America, please don't just go to celebrities, because you know what? When people see them, they see a brand, they see dollar signs, they don't really see, I mean, in a way, to be honest with you, when celebrities get to a certain level, like someone like Will Smith or Morgan Freeman or anybody, it's kind of like, they're not really like, they're almost like, I don't want to say colorless, because I'm sure they aspire to be themselves and really embrace their culture and who they are. But I mean, it almost becomes that way, right? Because anybody who sees them doesn't see a random person of a certain ethnicity. They see, the brand that they are. They see, I don't know, Will Smith, Independence Day. They see like, I don't know, millions and millions of dollars. And that's good, because I'm sure that like someone like him will never have to worry about being profiled. I'm sure as soon as they see him, they like fall in love right away, which is good, but they're not really, it's not, their experiences are not the one to ask for if you're really wanting to know what it's like for a person who is of a particular ethnicity in this country. You really have to go to somebody whose face isn't everywhere, who everybody doesn't know. So like an accountant, or like, I think that's a category of people that can be frustrated by these issues a lot, is black professionals who, who've like achieved something in their eyes. They're like, yeah, my family's so proud of me because I'm a doctor, or I'm a dentist, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm an accountant, or whatever it is. But they still deal with a lot of profiling, right? Because if their face isn't, the person who's pulling them over doesn't know the difference between them and somebody and anybody else. Just whatever racial stereotype that person has, that officer has, it's still going to apply it to anybody just because. And in fact, the person may be accused of not being whatever they say they are. One of my law school classmates was told that he was impersonating an attorney when he told an officer that he was one. So that's an example of a situation where that can happen. So it can make their achievements feel dimmed, because they can achieve those things but still have to deal with, based on their skin color being profiled a certain way, and not being seen as an individual, and being, processed as a person who is what they're about, but being, dismissed in the way that whoever, that officer is, or wherever view they're coming from, has decided that they want to treat, people of that paradigm, of that ethnicity. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on that we should think about, but my thing is that, we don't want the moment to pass by without really doing anything about it, without really making changes. If we do that, then I feel like the discourse is meaningless. If we just tend to be a society that talks about things, freaks out about things, and marches and marches and walks and thousands of millions, and then nothing changes really, and each of these jurisdictions don't really do anything differently, then, I don't know, what's the point then? Then it's kind of just like an exercise in just an abuse to the people then. So these things have to mean something. They have to be, there has to be accountability for the cries of, because the only thing that people can do is cry. If they cry, if their cry does not result in any sort of need to be accountable, then I don't know what will. Then what's gonna matter? If then the people don't matter, then we're just a country where there are people who are being ruled, and if people who are being ruled complain, oh well, then it becomes that sort of dynamic, and that's not what this country's about. That's not what this country's supposed to be about, and that's not what this country will ever be about.